The morning school drop-off at Maplewood Elementary had always been a chaotic, yet necessary routine. Parents would pull up to the side street adjacent to the school, let their kids hop out, and drive off in an orderly fashion. The street was public property, legally zoned for school access, and had been used this way for years without issue. But that all changed when Karen Murphy, the self-proclaimed ruler of the Maplewood Homeowners Association, decided she had a problem with it. Karen wasn't just any HOA president. She was the kind of woman who patrolled the neighborhood like a security guard, clipboard in hand, peering through people's windows to catch the slightest violation. She had lived in the HOA community near the school for years, and in her mind, that gave her dominion over everything within a 5-mile radius. One morning, as parents pulled up to drop their children off, they noticed something new. Bright red "No Parking" private property signs staked into ground along the curb. A few parents hesitated, but assumed it was some kind of misunderstanding. After all, this was a public street. Then came the violation notices. Karen, clad in her usual pressed khakis and HOA name badge, which she had made herself, stood on the sidewalk handing out $100 parking fines to every parent who dared to stop near the school. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said, shoving a fine to the driver's window of a stunned mother. "You're parked on private property, and this is an HOA-enforced violation. You'll need to submit payment within 7 business days, or we will escalate." A father in a blue sedan frowned as he accepted his ticket. "This is a public street," he argued. Karen's smug grin didn't waver. Not according to the Maplewood HOA charter. Word spread fast, and by the end of the day, dozens of parents were outraged. They gathered in the school parking lot, clutching their ridiculous citations. "She can't do this, right?" one mother asked. "She can't fine us for parking on public land?" Another father, visibly fuming, muttered, "I'm about 2 seconds away from calling the police." But Karen wasn't done yet. The next morning, she doubled down, this time calling in tow trucks to remove cars parked near the school. The trucks pulled up, flashing their yellow lights, as Karen stood arms crossed, triumphant, watching as the first car was hooked up. The parents had had enough. That's when one mother, Sarah Thompson, a lawyer, stepped forward. She folded her arms and leveled a chilling glare at Karen. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," she said. Karen scoffed. "Oh, please. What are you going to do? Sue me?" Sarah's smile was ice cold. "Oh, I'm not just going to sue you," she said. "I'm going to bury you." Karen's smug expression didn't falter as she watched the tow truck driver begin hooking up a silver SUV to haul it away. Parents were outraged, their voices rising in anger as they tried to argue with both the driver and Karen herself. But Karen stood firm, arms crossed over her chest, acting like a queen overseeing her kingdom. "This is private property," she declared, voice dripping with condescension. "And as HOA president, I have the right to enforce our parking regulations." Sarah Thompson, the lawyer who had already warned Karen once, stepped forward again. Unlike the others, she wasn't just angry, she was strategizing. "Let me ask you something, Karen," she said, her tone eerily calm. "Do you have a deed proving that this land belongs to the HOA?" Karen blinked at her. "It's part of the community," she scoffed. "The HOA maintains it." Sarah nodded, taking out her phone and tapping the screen a few times. "Interesting," she mused, "because according to the county land records," she turned the screen toward Karen, "this is public land, meaning you just had public citizens' vehicles towed off government property under false pretenses." Karen's face twitched. That's not right." Sarah smirked. "Oh, it's very right. And you know what that means?" The gathered parents leaned in, waiting for the hammer to drop. "It means," Sarah continued, "you just committed fraud, property interference, and, you could even be criminally charged for illegally fining and towing vehicles." Karen's bravado wavered. She took a tiny step back, glancing at the tow truck driver. They signed HOA agreements when they moved into this area." Sarah tilted her head. "Are all of these parents HOA members?" Karen hesitated. "That's what I thought," Sarah said, turning to the tow truck driver. "If you continue towing that car, you could be liable for illegal seizure property. Do you really want to be part of a lawsuit?" The driver's face paled. He immediately stopped what he was doing, unhooking the car from the tow hitch. He turned to Karen. I think we need official documentation before proceeding. Karen's face turned red. You coward, she hissed. But the damage was already done. The call that changed everything. Sarah wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone again and called the local police department. Yes, I'd like to report fraudulent activity and illegal towing near Maplewood Elementary, she said, her voice cool and professional. Yes, I have multiple witnesses. She paused, her eyes locking onto Karen. Oh, and let's not forget falsely issuing financial penalties on public property. Karen froze. You can't do this, she stammered. This is HOA jurisdiction. Sarah gave her a slow, dangerous smile. That's not up to you anymore, Karen. The arrival of law enforcement. 15 minutes later, 2 squad cars pulled up to the scene. Officers stepped out, taking in the situation. Angry parents, illegally towed cars, and a flustered Karen clutching a stack of fake violation notices. One officer, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, stepped forward. Who's in charge here? Karen immediately puffed out her chest. I am, she declared. I'm the HOA president, and I have full authority over parking on this street. The officer raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, are you claiming this is HOA property? Yes, Karen said quickly. The officer pulled out her own tablet, tapped a few times, then looked back up at Karen. Well, that's interesting because public land records disagree with you. Karen's face drained of color. Ma'am, the officer continued, voice firm, you are not authorized to fine people, tow cars, or claim ownership over government-zone land. She gestured to the stack of bogus tickets in Karen's hands. These are fraudulent financial citations, which could land you in serious legal trouble. Karen panicked. This is a misunderstanding. The HOA handbook clearly. The HOA handbook doesn't override county and state law. Sarah interjected smoothly. And right now, you're looking at a class action lawsuit, the possibility of fraud charges and massive fines, which, ironically, you love handing out so much. The officer sighed. We'll need you to come down to the station for questioning, ma'am. Karen gasped. The parents cheered. Wait, and oh, she shouted, stepping back. You can't, this is my community. The officer gave her a level stare. Not anymore. And with that, Karen was escorted into the police car, her face a mixture of rage and utter humiliation. The aftermath of Karen's fall. Karen being hauled away in a police car was just the beginning. Within days, the entire Maplewood HOA board was investigated, and it wasn't long before other shady violations were uncovered. Turns out, Karen had been pocketing money from bogus HOA fines for years, skimming off the top and illegally inflating fees. When news broke about her fraudulent parking fines, homeowners started digging deeper, and what they found was even worse. Karen had been targeting specific homeowners for excessive fees, mainly those who had spoken out against her. She had doctored HOA documents to make it seem like certain rules existed, when they never did. And worst of all, she had been using HOA funds to pay for personal vacations and a new deck on her house. By the time the dust settled, Karen was facing multiple lawsuits, a fraud investigation, and had been officially removed from HOA leadership forever. The sweetest justice of all. With Karen gone, the new HOA board took over, this time led by reasonable homeowners who actually cared about the community. All fraudulent fines were overturned. Karen's illegal tow fees were refunded to affected parents. And the bogus no parking signs? Torn down and destroyed. Sarah, the lawyer, became a local hero, and parents never had to worry about parking again. As for Karen, she lost everything. She had to sell her house to pay off legal fees. She was banned from holding any HOA leadership position ever again. And worst of all, she had to move into a neighborhood with no HOA. The irony? She spent years controlling people with HOA rules, only to end up in a place where she had no power at all. And for the parents of Maplewood Elementary, every morning drop-off became a thing of beauty, a quiet reminder that justice had been served. Karen Murphy had spent years treating the Maplewood HOA like her personal kingdom, wielding her fabricated power like a weapon against homeowners and parents alike. But the moment she was loaded into that police car, the neighborhood finally began to fight back. Sarah Thompson, the lawyer who had single-handedly dismantled Karen's fraud, wasn't about to let things end with just a warning. She knew Karen had been falsely fining residents for years, and if she had stolen from parents, she had likely stolen from homeowners as well. And she was absolutely right. The investigation that changed everything. The day after Karen's arrest, Sarah wasted no time. She filed an official complaint with the state HOA Oversight Committee, requesting a full audit of Maplewood's HOA finances. It didn't take long before the skeletons in Karen's closet came tumbling out. Within a week, forensic accountants had pored over the HOA's financial records. What they found was shocking but not surprising. Over $100,000 in HOA fees had been misappropriated over the past 5 years. Dozens of phony citations had been issued to targeted homeowners, some of whom had moved away due to Karen's harassment. Karen had paid herself an illegal salary out of HOA funds, something completely forbidden by HOA laws. And worst of all, she had used HOA money to fund multiple luxury vacations, including a cruise to the Caribbean and a business trip to Europe, all while homeowners struggled to pay her excessive fines. When confronted with irrefutable evidence, Karen tried to deny everything. "This is a witch hunt," she screamed at reporters outside her home. "This is just a misunderstanding. I was trying to help the community." But the facts didn't lie. Within 2 weeks, the state attorney general's office filed criminal charges against Karen. Her official charges? Heavy checkmark fraud, heavy checkmark embezzlement, heavy checkmark misuse of HOA funds, heavy checkmark falsifying HOA documents. And thanks to Sarah's class action lawsuit, every single parent who had received one of Karen's fake fines joined in to take her down. Karen, once the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, was now facing serious legal consequences. And the worst part? She was going to lose everything. Karen's fall from power. Within a month, Karen was completely removed from the HOA. She tried to fight it, screaming in meetings, threatening lawsuits, but no one supported her anymore. The very people who had once feared her were now cheering for her downfall. Her house? Seized by the court to cover her legal debts. Her bank account? Drained from fighting lawsuits. Her reputation? Destroyed beyond repair. And then came the final humiliation. When Karen couldn't pay back the stolen HOA funds, she was forced to declare bankruptcy. She lost her home, her money, and her social standing. Within 3 months, Karen had fled Maplewood altogether, moving to a rundown apartment across town, one that had no HOA. The irony? She had spent her entire life controlling people with HOA rules, only to end up somewhere where she had no power at all. Maplewood's bright future without Karen. With Karen gone, the HOA board was completely restructured. All false fines were overturned. All illegally towed vehicles were reimbursed. Every stolen dollar was repaid to the community. Sarah, the hero of the case, was voted onto the HOA board, ensuring transparency and fairness moving forward. The new HOA focused on actually helping residents, rather than terrorizing them with pointless citations. And as for the parents, morning drop-off at Maplewood Elementary became peaceful again. No more bogus fines, no more fake parking restrictions. Just parents dropping off their kids in peace, knowing that justice had been served. The final nail in Karen's coffin. Months later, Sarah received an anonymous email. It was a photo of Karen. She was standing outside a rundown apartment complex, arguing with her new landlord, a man who looked just as stubborn and power-hungry as she had been. The email subject line, HOA Karen gets a taste of her own medicine. Sarah chuckled, closing her laptop. Karma had done its job. And Karen? She would never hold power again.